Hello Internet, my name is Father Casey Cole, and as a Franciscan friar, I have vowed to live three things for the rest of my life: poverty, chastity, and obedience. Or as we like to say, no money, no honey, and do what you're told. Obviously it's a little bit deeper than that, so let's talk about the topics you really want to know: money, sex, and obedience. Beginning first with money. Many people can't wrap their head around how someone can take a vow of poverty and also live in the world. How do you pay for things, people ask? The answer is simple. We work. Just like many of you watching at home, we have jobs at a parish, a school, a ministry site, and these places pay us a salary. As religious, we are tax exempt and so don't have to pay income tax, but this is only the case because nothing is ever in our name. All of our paychecks go directly to the house where it's shared for the needs of all. The guardian of each house uses some of that money to pay for the utilities and other house expenses. Some of it goes to our provincial office to support the sick, aged, and retired friars, as well as our student friars in formation. And some of it is allocated back to the community as donations. At the end of it all, each friar receives a stipend of about $200 each month, give or take, to pay for our own personal expenses. Toiletries, haircuts, leisure activities, things that only we can use. So how much do we actually make, you ask? Are you just rolling in the dough? Not exactly. Believe it or not, our salaries are fixed and publicly posted in every diocese. For priests, there is a pay scale based on the number of years of experience, and I think mine is somewhere in the range of $28,000 a year. The parish does pay for part of our auto insurance and gives us a food stipend, but yeah, don't become a priest to get rich. At least not a Catholic priest. Anglicans do much better. I do have quite a bit of equipment and a studio, however, which has led many over the years to question my vow of poverty. How do I pay for all this expensive gear? A Mac computer? Honestly, I don't. You do. No doubt you watched an ad before this video played. Across both of my channels, that works out to about $1,000 or $2,000 a month, which is by no means Mr. Beast levels, but a good amount of money. Some of you are beyond generous and gift-breaking in the habit with a Patreon donation each month, and I give talks to generate income. All of this is put into a provincial bank account where it is 100% meant for ministry expenses, not my personal use. I set a budget each year, spend what is necessary for ministry, everything is great. For me, there's no problem with having expensive equipment because it's not mine, it's the ministry's. It's like having a computer in your office at work. The business owns it. If I were to leave the friars, none of this would be mine, it would be the friars. Which is how I'm able to answer this final question on poverty as confidently as I can. How do you consider yourself poor with all this stuff? Because it's not mine. St. Francis told the brothers that they were allowed to have the tools necessary for their trade. This is my trade, these are my tools. Doing this ministry doesn't allow me to buy nicer clothes, eat at nice restaurants, take expensive vacations, nothing like that. My personal life is very simple. My bedroom is bare with very few personal possessions. I do have some possessions, yes, and it's because of this that we have to remember what the vow of poverty actually means. Every Christian, religious or not, is called to some form of a life of poverty. Straight from the Beatitudes. Matthew says poor in spirit, while Luke just says poor, but they both point to the same reality. Reliance on Jesus, freedom to follow Jesus on his mission unencumbered. I live this vow, not in that I'm destitute or starve each day, that I own nothing at all, but rather that I stake no claim on any of my things. I use them for God's benefit, for my health, but I own nothing extravagant or in excess. Everything I have is old, secondhand, and simply functional, and that's all I need. My life is not defined by possessions, but oriented towards the mission of Christ. Now to the fun part, sex. Everyone always wants to know about chastity. People ask me all the time, do your sexual desires decrease in religious life? When you put on the habit, become a priest, do things just get easier for you? What do you think? I once heard a bishop speak to soon-to-be ordained men at an ordination. He said, when you lay down on that floor, don't think that you're going to stand up a completely new person. You may be ordained, but you will be the same person with the same gifts and the same flaws. And it's true. Wearing a habit or a Roman collar, taking vows, doesn't mean that your libido just disappears. You're still human. Now I will say, there is a sense in which it feels a little easier to resist temptation in that you have consciously sworn off sex and romantic partnerships. when you're not looking, when you've made it clear to yourself and others that there is zero chance that you will hook up with someone, it becomes a lot easier to see people for who they are rather than as an opportunity. Sexual tension absolutely does decrease. But there is still the internet. There is still the bottomless pit of filth calling out to you, trying to offer a moment of cheap satisfaction, and that temptation doesn't go away. Some priests do actually struggle with porn addictions, and all priests struggle with the temptation of wandering eyes and lustful thoughts, just like the rest of the world. I am by no means perfect, and I hope that people don't see me that way. The difference between you and me, really, is not that I have somehow mastered my temptations and never fall to them, but rather that I am much more open about my sinfulness. I literally walk around with a sackcloth, telling the world that I am not strong enough to go at it alone. Before I was a friar, I was a huge sinner in this area, and it is only because of the grace of God, only by doing penance, that I strive to live a holier life than I did before. Of course, our temptation isn't limited to just our imaginations, and so people often want to know, have you ever fallen in love after taking vows? Would you ever leave if you did? Yes, I have fallen in love. No, I would never leave because of it. A few years ago, I met someone that absolutely struck me through the heart. Now, I had been in love a few times before entering, been in a couple long-term relationships, and so I knew what I was giving up. But I hadn't met her. Really, in my most spectacular of dreams, I'm not sure I could have crafted a more perfect woman. So what did I do? Well, I thought about her constantly for about a month. Felt absolutely lovesick, and then got back to my normal life. Really, I'm not kidding. I met the woman of my dreams and didn't do anything about it. She doesn't even know. Why? Because I'm not called to marriage. As nice as it might seem at times, as many things as it can offer that this life can't, as perfect as she was, in my most rational, prayerful self, I know that this is what I want more than anything. Sometimes that means saying no to great things, and so I can say with the utmost confidence, no matter who I meet later in life, and I have no doubt that I will fall in love again, it won't matter. Even if the church were to allow married men to become priests, it wouldn't matter. This life, vowed life in fraternity, that's what I want. But what if, people always persist, what if some hypothetical priest found the perfect person and they did leave? What would happen if you broke your vows? First of all, it's an incredibly offensive question. Can we all agree on that? You wouldn't go up to an engaged or married friend and ask that. You wouldn't say to some random guy, okay, so you're married, but what if you find a better woman? When I hear this question about breaking the vows, that's what I hear, just so we're clear. But yes, I acknowledge that there is a technical answer to this, and so we can look at it from that perspective. Hypothetically, if I, a priest, were to meet a woman and go try to get married without being dispensed from my vows or being laicized, I would be automatically excommunicated and the marriage wouldn't be valid in the Catholic Church. It's sort of like trying to divide by zero. It just can't happen. A friar or priest can request to be dispensed from their vows and laicized, and this does happen. Even though you made vows to God, and even though there's a special permanent character marked on your soul at ordination, what are you going to do? Really. As far as the church sees it, if you don't want to live your vows, you are probably worse off continuing to be in the order, and the church is better off letting you go, and so it's kind of God's problem at that point. Which leaves us with the final and arguably most difficult vow, obedience. For me, poverty and chastity have their spikes of difficulty, feelings of great passion that must be overcome, but obedience is the constant one. The one that's always there, always challenging. It's the day-to-day service to the fraternity, the handing over your will to the ridiculousness of difficult people, of being present to the community when you just want to do whatever you want to do. But most people don't know that, and so their questions are more along the lines of, what do you do when your superior gives you an order against your conscience or church teaching? Answer, you don't do it. We have to always remember that our vow of obedience isn't to some guy and all of his flaws and idiosyncrasies. It's to the office he holds, to the church he is leading, to the gospel that it's founded on. To have a superior command us to do something against a major teaching of the church, against our conscience, is a contradiction in terms, and we can't be faithful to it. Frankly, I have never experienced this in any real sense in my 9 years. What is far more difficult, and definitely more prevalent, is when a superior asks me to do something that I personally don't agree with, but isn't morally wrong. Do I just grit my teeth, close my eyes, and follow blindly? No, of course not. But also, yes, it's never good to just follow blindly, but there's definitely something to be said about giving another person our trust. In a world where we can act as gods in all things but name, acting like we're the center of the universe and never doing anything unless it conforms to our desires, there's something actually quite liberating about letting go of our own opinions from time to time. Saying, you know what? Maybe there's a reason that God put you in this leadership position. Maybe I should give it a try. Is it easy? Absolutely not. People often ask if I get to choose my own assignment, and the answer is no. The provincial asks my recommendations, and in both cases, I've been blessed to have been given my first choice, but I don't get to choose how long I stay. As some of you remember, I was assigned to the University of Georgia last year, my dream job in some ways, only to be transferred after 1 year. That sucks. I don't know how else to say it. I've spent the entirety of 2020, from January 3rd until now, brooding over this, frustrated with the decision. Obedience is not always easy. But, as I say, it is liberating and can actually be quite a blessing. As much as I did not want to leave, there are things about this new place that are actually even better. If the decision were only ever up to me, I would have never ended up here, would have never met these wonderful people, never done some of the incredible things I get to do now. And I think that that's the way that the vows have to be approached. As much as we could say that they mean no money, no honey, and do what you're told, negative, binding commands, the reality couldn't be more different. I am living a far more positive, free life than I ever did before. The insistence on simplicity and detachment of the vow of poverty frees me from the very ugly part of myself that wants to possess, that longs for more and more and more. Today, I find myself overwhelmingly content with what I have and far more thankful than I was before. The insistence on purity and self-control of the vow of chastity frees me from the very ugly part of myself that wants nothing but shallow pleasure, that longs for cheap love. Today, I actually find myself with more opportunities to connect with women on a healthier, yet no less intimate level. And the insistence on humility and trust of the vow of obedience frees me from that very ugly part of myself that wants to be a king, that longs for power and control. Today I find myself enjoying the opportunity to serve others and far more willing to live as Jesus did. Which is the very purpose of the vows in the first place, is it not? They're not ends in themselves, but vehicles for what truly matters: discipleship. Sure, I may have to give up a few things in this life, and that may be unattractive to some people, but what good are those things if they don't lead me to Christ? For me, this is the best path I know. Binding? Yeah, I guess, in the sense that it binds me to Christ. But in reality, they liberate me to do as I was created to be. And for that reason, this is a wonderful life.